Of the family, I'd like to thank you all for coming together today to help us celebrate Ray. Father, husband, grandfather, great-grandfather, friend, colleague, farmer, exporter, entrepreneur, and conversationalist. And many more roles that you may know him from. Whatever the role and relationship you might have had with Ray, what everyone would have noticed was his sense of family, community, and place, a strong and sometimes questionable sense of humour, his hospitality, his expertise and deep knowledge of agriculture and produce and many other things as well, his nurturing and welcoming nature, and the love that he gave so freely. We'd like to start the proceedings by playing a short video that was produced a few years back by the Bay of Plenty Export New Zealand Association, of which he was the recipient of the award. Thank you.
forever changed young Grace. These aspects of his parents' lives had a lasting and significant impact on Dad's childhood and even into his adult life, and served as a background to the development of his personality. Dad grew up on his father's farm in Ponatahi Valley in the Wairarapa. He spent most of his childhood years living in a semicircular old Nissen hut, an old army barracks where Gran would boil the clothes in a copper on laundry day, and the long drop toilet was a scary nighttime walk away. Ray attended Ponatahi Primary School, maximum roll of 35, with all of the other valley children, often riding his horse the 5 miles along the dirt road to and from school. When he wasn't at school, he was expected to be working on the family farm, and there was no excuse for slacking. As the oldest son, much was expected of Dad particularly. Dad went to Wairarapa College in Masterton for secondary school as a boarder, which often meant being away from home for weeks at a time. He had a busy school life, playing rugby as a drummer in the pipe band and as a military cadet. Mates and dances and local halls were also a feature of this time. He would have liked to have stayed to finish school, but his father needed him home on the farm after school C. His need for adventure then took him to Australia, where he introduced the art of hitchhiking to the locals, had many adventures, and met my mother, who was on a similar intrepid adventure. On their return, Mum and Dad married and settled in Lower Hutt. During this time, Dad drove heavy machinery to create new suburbs on the hills in Wellington. I was born there, and his friends were often international in nature. Soon after, Mum and Dad had the opportunity to immigrate to Canada and take up a good position there. This would have ideally suited both of their adventurous natures. However, Dad was needed back on the farm. So when I was about 18 months old, we moved into a modest home on the family sheep and cattle farm and became a farming family once more. This farm, which you'll see out in the picture outside, and every crease of it is woven into our bones. Its later loss was like the loss of a limb for all of us. We worked as a family on the farm in all its seasons. Anyone who's grown up in the countryside will know that there is never a rest and always a new task to do. Working on a hill farm brought additional challenges. Our father certainly accustomed us to hardship and to hard work. But we worked alongside him. We were able to ride a horse and drive a tractor before we could ride a bike. We worked as part-time vets, delivering lambs, giving subcut antibiotics from Papa's lambing bag, suturing where necessary, nursing orphaned and sickly animals back to health before we could read. We mustered, we drafted, we docked, we herded, we dipped, we loaded trucks, we fed out and stacked hay bales, we chopped kindling, fed the dogs and milked the cow. Our enduring memory of Dad is being on the horse in front of him as little ones like Juno here, or on the farm bike behind him, riding along dodgy ridgelines and hoping we wouldn't fall down them, or on the back of the tractor, rain-soaked on a freezing day, cutting baling twine with slippery fingers numb with cold, feeding out hay to waiting sheep and cattle at the back of the farm, and refilling the tray in the sleet and sometimes the snow from the top hay shed. However, the farm alone was never enough for Dad, and his community spirit and social nature led him to be an active member in various organisations over the farm years, including Young Farmers, the Masonic Lodge and Golden Chairs. As well as his community work, he established several businesses while on the farm, including haymaking, trucking and engineering. He built a large engineering workshop near the farm sheds and built a wide range of equipment and buildings there, and I imagine Tim was there at the opening party. The next turning point for Dad was when I was 4 years old, and Dad had the opportunity to go on an agricultural exchange trip to Taiwan at the age of 25. This changed our lives forever. From this time, we always had a Chinese connection, and Dad adopted various Chinese families over the years as his own, and some of them are here today. Obviously, this was a theme throughout his life from then on, until culminating the day many years later when he went to Malaysia and married Mandy and brought her and her daughter Stephanie to live in Tauranga. But that comes later in the story. Dad was renowned for adopting and helping people, with a whole stream of boarders and others he shepherded, often over many years. We lost track of the number of children and grandchildren he adopted into his extended whānau. The edges of his family were very blurred. His hospitality and social relationships were a big part of his life. How many a time we were told, "I'll just be a minute, I just need to see a man about a dog," and we'd be waiting in the car for ages. We learnt to take our sleeping bags with us to valley parties to try and get some sleep in the car, and we learnt to cater and serve all comers, making drinks and serving visitors, baking for the shearers, taking smoko up to the docking or haymaking crew if we weren't up there working beside them. We learnt to cater for crowds. Throughout our childhood, our family went on holidays to Hawke's Bay, Taupo, Turangi and the Sounds, where our activities were based mainly around his love of boats and fishing. We cooked a lot of fish for our dinners. He was proud that he'd taught us all to be competent handlers of boats and rods, and it was this experience of the Sounds and boats in the water that inspired my brother here and his wife to build a business around a boat-only access national park in Sydney. Dad's life path was cruelly interrupted when we were in primary school. An angry ram rammed him, literally, and caused an injury to his hip that led to time away from the whānau, initially in Rotorua for a month, and later for about 9 months and many surgeries later in Palmerston North hospitals. This is where this just past couple of weeks when he was in hospital, he thought he was back there in the Palmerston North Hospital. While there, his hip was pulled apart 3 times and he had to learn to walk again many times. It was this deteriorating injury that a decade later caused him to make the heartbreaking, gut-wrenching and life-altering decision to sell our family farm, to sell our beloved family farm. I remember at the time him asking my advice about what he should do next, which was so uncharacteristic and unexpected of a parent, particularly Dad. It was like he was adrift in life and uncertain of direction without the farm there as his anchor. Mum and Dad eventually settled on the Bay of Plenty and moved to Omokoroa. They kept the connection with the land through their small avocado orchard and work in pack houses. The next phase of his life, and the one most of you will know him in, was when he sold the orchard and the Omokoroa house and used what was left of the farm to buy his beloved house in Bethlehem and later his office on 15th Ave. Around this time, as you will have seen from the video, Dad fell into the export industry, which married his love for farming with his love of Asia. In this role, he travelled widely to meet growers and promote Kiwi produce. I'm convinced that his success was at least in part due to his farming roots and his natural connection to the growers. The last few weeks, sleeping on the floor in the hospital beside Dad was very illuminating as to where his heart lay and what his true nature was. His Māori side was clear in his determination to ask every person who entered the room, even if they were just coming to take a blood test, where they were from, what their last name was, and to try to make a connection. His adopted Chinese culture was clear in his automatic tapping of, "That's enough, thanks," with every sip of water. And when he was drifting in his thoughts and not engaged in direct conversation, he was always on the farm, whether giving instructions about drafting and crutching the sheep, talking about rounding up the heifers, or telling tall tales about Ginny the horse. He was a farm boy at heart. His determination was very clear during his last days as well, as he fought on to see my brother and sister, who were still in MIQ, having travelled from Australia. Despite most of his conversations in his final 3 days being with his late brother David and his father, and a few other friends and relatives who had passed on. After Amanda and Derek's arrival on Friday afternoon, he remained conscious long enough to say their names and mumble, very, very proud. He was finally calm, and he slept till the morning. When he took his final breaths, surrounded by the family and the home he so carefully curated and loved. In his last days, he was asked to sum up what was most important to him, and those who know him well will not be surprised that he responded with, "He aha te mea nui o tēnei ao. Mā koe ki atu. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata." If you ask me what is the most important thing in the world, I will tell you, it is people, it is people, it is people. Sorry. And now we're very uncharacteristically going to sing a song.
Oh, the Lord is my shepherd, so nothing I
I'm recording this message today from Prague in the Czech Republic, since the current situation sadly didn't allow me to be there in person. But I'll thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about Uncle Ray today. As I mentioned, I met Ray and the family back in 2010 as I just moved to New Zealand with my partner and now wife Yara. I'll never forget how we first met. I was being introduced as the new engineer to come and mend Ray's computers, the business computers, and the network. During the first meeting, Ray gave a rundown of what Ellis Agricultural Services was about, the history of it was, and the areas of IT that I might be able to help with. And I immediately thought this was someone I would get on well with. He obviously had lots of knowledge, lots of experience, very well spoken, and certainly knew how to tell a good story. From that point, we had a few meetings, and it wasn't long until Ray, Mandy, and Stephanie welcomed us to their home, and we became very close. Essentially, we became part of the family. the next decade was back to action, emotions, ups and downs as life goes on. For us, it was our first home, our first baby, our wedding in France, our second baby, all major life events that we had the chance to have the Ellises next to us, which was a true blessing. Uncle Ray and I both loved engineering and problem solving in general, so understanding, breaking and fixing a wide variety of things. So we spent a considerable amount of time talking, having conversations, and sometimes for several hours at a time. But Ray always had a sound piece of advice. He always had a story. He was also a great listener. I'm trying to keep this short here. There are so many stories that I could go on for a very, very long time. I've learned so much from Ray over the years, and I considered him a father and a mentor. And I'm very grateful for the time we spent together. My family joins me in sending love and compassion to Mama Mindy, Stephanie, and of course all of you, dear friends and family. I wish we could have been here. Uncle Ray would forever be in our hearts, and we wish him to rest in peace. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa mau te moana, kia tere te ka roi e moi tu uarahi. Take care and goodbye.
Ray was a good friend who always made us welcome in his home and also in the office, where I frequently made use of his Wi-Fi. I know this friendship is going to continue with Mandy and Stephanie, but we know there will always be a gap. Ray and I had a few drinks over our time together, and we chewed the fat over many, many subjects. And what I can say is that Ray was always the expert. When I did stay over, he insisted that I have a good breakfast, and his bacon and eggs was second to none. And I know that Stephanie's going to have some big shoes to fill to feed me going forward. We are so sorry that we can't be with you all today, but we send our love to you all.
Cheers, Ray.
Cheers.
Gonna miss you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good morning to everybody on the day of Ray's funeral. It's to me a celebration of Ray's life. Obviously, welcome to all of the family and to all the friends and acquaintances that have managed to be able to get there with our COVID lockdown. One very quick note before I start is the Folan team in Portland wish the family very well, and obviously very sad of Ray's death. I think they had a very good relationship with him, and I did speak to Stu Folan just a couple of days ago, and he was quite sad, and he said he'd met Ray and enjoyed his company, and as I say, very sad. As I say, it's a celebration of Ray's life to me. I don't see it as necessarily a sad occasion, but I think he's now passed, obviously, and yes, sorrowful to see him go. I was very fortunate to see him a couple of times in the last week, and had a great conversation with him last Wednesday, which I think we both enjoyed, and he did ask me to come back. Unfortunately, when I went back on Friday, he had deteriorated. I managed to say my goodbyes to him, and it was a blessing for me to be able to have seen him in those last few days. I've known Ray roughly 20 years, maybe a little longer. Been in various meetings with Ray and a couple of industry groups with Ray. The one big thing that I struck with Ray over the years was his loyalty, his trust, his respect, and his directness at times. And I enjoy that, because at times that's what certainly our industry needs. And he was very forthright and very correct in the business that he did, and we had a very good business relationship through certainly the last probably 10 years before I retired. He obviously came from a farming background, and worked his way into our industry, and I think did it very well, and had a lot of loyal customers around the world, and obviously suppliers as well. And it's one of those things. I think, having known Ray obviously certainly in the last few years, and his deteriorating health, we had a few laughs and certainly a few whiskies from time to time. Even when things went wrong, I remember when he fell over and I think damaged his nose. I had to give him some cheek about it, but he enjoyed that banter, and I guess he, the older generation, they're tough, and he hung in there extremely well for the issues that he'd had. So yes, as I say, to all the family, my commiserations, and I wish Ray well in his next life. Not too much more I can say. As I say, I enjoyed his company, enjoyed the whiskies with him and the various times that we had spent together. But yeah, it's nice to have been asked to do this, and it is a shame that I can't be there and be a pallbearer as Ray had asked me. But COVID's done a lot of damaging things to a lot of us. So to everybody, again, thank you for coming. To the family, my very best wishes, and thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex, one of Ray's grandchildren. I'm going to read some emails from friends who couldn't be here today. So the first email I have is from York Shang. York says, "When I think about the first time we visited you at Ben Ha and your career afterwards, you have had a very full life, from a family man to a businessman. You opened your eyes to the world and followed a path to many different places throughout the world. You have touched the lives of many people, Ray, which is much more than can be said for a lot of us." The second email is from Catherine Beard, Executive Director of Export NZ based in Wellington. Catherine said, "I am really sorry to hear, and my condolences to his family. I do remember him being at a lot of the meetings I have attended over the years, and he always had valuable input to make, and was good at keeping visiting officials honest. It is people like Ray who are the heart and soul of organisations like Export NZ, where the ethos is all about exporters helping each other. Steve Davey, International Marketing Manager of Bostock NZ, onion supplier based in Auckland, said, "Dear Stephanie and Mandy, my condolences for your sad loss. I really wanted to see Ray off on Wednesday, however, ended up with lockdown here in Auckland. I got to know Ray well on an onion industry trip to Thailand and the Philippines. A few years back, his depth of knowledge and willingness to share, it was a blessing for a then newbie to the industry such as myself. We got on really well, I enjoyed his company, and he is such an open, genuine bloke, with a love of his family, attributes I value. I'll miss him." The last email is from Richard and Jeannie Abbott, old business associates and a friend based in Queensland, Australia. Said, "Oh Stephanie, I am so sorry to read this news, but I guess it's been just as devastating to watch the best guy I've ever known battle the pain over the past 2 years. I know he had been preparing you and your mum for this time,
and I want you to stay strong in your heart and mind. As I am writing this, I am crying, but more for you and your mum now, as we are the ones who have to suffer. I would be there for you if we could travel, but we can't. Stay well now. Love, Richard and Jeannie.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda, or Fred as Mr. Ellis used to always call me. I'm Gwenda's daughter who worked with him at Ellis Agriculture. So I've just got an email from Mum who can't be here today. She says, some of my time with Ray Ellis. How do you package up a few decades of hard work, laughs and experience with someone like Ray? Ray was very much a member of my family. He loved my girls and always made sure they were well looked after. Sorry. If they had to come into the office after school, food, drinks and of course the TV, and spent many of evenings with the family around the dinner table. In the early days of EAS, we were shipping a few containers a month. Very soon we were shipping constantly growing volumes weekly on a number of different shipping lines. Ray always impressed me with his ability to negotiate and with the producers and clients both in New Zealand and internationally. I learned a massively lot in a short space of time. It was not always easy to travel with all the laptops, briefcases, handbags, cell phones, etc., etc. Ray would just say to me, "Come on, it's building muscles." Yeah, thanks, mate. Things got easier once Debbie came on board. Ray was out of the country at the time to come back to Debbie sitting at her desk. That'll teach him for going away and leaving her in charge. There were high times and not so high times. We were in Indonesia to visit a client who had shipped seed potatoes to. We were at dinner with the agent and he was telling us of the travel time for the next day to the farm. 5 hours there and 5 hours back. Ray and I just gave each other that look. Oh, really? Once out of the car, a beater went before us to keep the tigers and snakes away. Ray was not so popular with his shipping and finance manager, I can tell you that. I also learned how good he was on the end of a hairdryer. One earlier trip, my shampoo had leaked all through my bag, and about 10:30 at night I phoned his room and asked him to bring the dryer, and of course the scotch, to assist drying off my clothes. Ray thought it was so funny, but once again his shipping and finance manager was not over the moon about it. I remember I had to urgently travel to South Korea. His comment was, "While you're over there, can you please do Japan, Philippines, oh, and on the back, just stop into Hong Kong." A 4-day trip turned into 16. Ray was a man of integrity and honour. He always treated people with respect. He was a very hard worker and often would stay back in the office to answer emails and phone calls, given the time differences between our country and our markets. He served on many committees and groups related to our industry and was very well respected. Ray, I love you. I'm really sorry you ended as it did. You're really good to me and my family in so many ways. I will miss you. I consider it a joy, honour and a privilege to have shared some of our lives. You'll be greatly missed, my friend. Farewell and rest in peace now. Your friend and travel buddy, Gwenda.
Hello, I'm Brian, the very much younger brother. Suzanne talked about the growing up on Ponatahi on the farm at Ben Ha, where the house they moved into was the house 4 children, 2 parents lived in. It was essentially a state house in the country to start with, because that's what rehab farmers got. My enduring memories of that little house was the 75-pound bags of sugar that were in the house, the 25-pound bags of flour, and having a bath 3 or 4 times a week and sharing the bath water with 3 or 4 people because water was so short. Raymond was always the big brother. Went off to boarding school, came home. I think my first memory of him in teenage years was him making a go-kart with his friend Alan Wyeth, who he used to see in Hong Kong from time to time. Alan's a Masterton boy, ended up living in Hong Kong for 33 years. We'd be driving down that Ponatahi's road on the go-kart, watching out for traffic, one at one end, one at the other, going down, turning it round from time to time. Suzanne also touched on the polo. He used to play polo. One day he went down to polo, forgot his helmet, and Tim Hewitt's dad, I don't know whether he was there at the time, but Raymond was playing. He took a ball to the head, didn't think anything of it, and those polo balls are hard, particularly at speed. Raymond being Raymond, he wasn't going to miss a night out. Headed up to Masterton, thundering headache, ended up at the hospital with a delayed concussion. We came home, we thought, have you got another hangover? No, it was delayed concussion. And the other enduring memory, or 2 other enduring memories, was in those days the dogs used to be taken down for Hydatids dosing at the local Hydatids dosing strip. And I can remember Raymond led the way for him, myself and David to all do similar things. Driving home with the dogs in the back of the truck, the dogs yapping, Raymond not being able to control them, turned his head round in the 1938 30-hundredweight Bedford and drove it off the road. David and I did similar things and similar experiences in years later, and I can still see Dad sitting there on each occasion, sitting, looking out the window, wondering what the heck we had done. And then the other incident I'll never forget was Dad on the farm had a dog called Scott. This dog was trouble, nothing but trouble, and Dad was going to get rid of it. And I had the pleasure, dubious or otherwise, to be at home when Mum and Dad were away. Raymond was on the farm. He rode up the back in front of a cliff, and he'd taken the shotgun to get rid of some rabbits. He thought he'd put a shot above the head of the dog. The only thing, it went straight through the dog. He was a bit worried about what Dad would say, but Dad was delighted. Thanks, Raymond, you've done a job. And they are my memories of Raymond, the big brother we will never forget, the brother who led the way in many areas, and was someone who was always looking for opportunities. When he saw those opportunities, he took them. These last few weeks have been particularly difficult. Suzanne, Mandy, Stephanie, you've all been wonderful saints, and we were so thrilled that Derek and Amanda could get over here last Friday, got out last Friday to see their dad just before he left us. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I'm the boss now. I hope. One memory, we got something over Raymond. I had a girlfriend up from Wellington. She was the same age as Raymond. I'd have been 9, he would have been 12. We thought we'd go to down to the cow paddock, and we broke up a 40-pound apple box and had the planks off it, the 3 of us. Said to Raymond, come on. Well, we loaded these boards up with cow pads. Oh, we had a great time. We won. Poor Raymond. He had to go home, and Mum wasn't very pleased at the state of Raymond's clothes, but, you know, we talked our way out of it. That was the joys of farm life. One other thing about Raymond, I'll never forget, he was on his way overseas on one of those trips to, I'm not sure, Taiwan or somewhere, and we were to meet him in Brisbane. We live 400 miles north of Brisbane, and I got taken to hospital urgently, so they organised him to fly up to have the weekend with my husband. Oh well, they cleared the table and put everything away. Well, I came out of hospital a couple of days later, looked at the cupboards. Oh, Raymond put the butter in the cupboard, didn't he? 50-degree heat, and it was just blah. He wasn't very popular. And left the light on all night, and we had terrible stink beetles, and the passage was covered in these dirty beetles. Oh, lucky he'd gone home before I got home. So yeah, that was up Raymond. Don't think he ever wanted to come back to central Queensland again. So, no, we had our good times. Lots of laughs. always remember that. And, yeah. Didn't have too many fights, I don't think. Did we, Brian?
Except for the cow pats.
Oh, yeah, that was, yeah. Dammed up the creek once and Dad wondered why there was no water, but yeah, we sorted it out. Rest in peace, Raymond. Had some good times, a few drinks together and a few laughs. Thanks, Ray. Thank you, Stephanie. Mandy, Derek, Amanda and Suzanne.
Thank you for coming today to share this time to remember Ray. A man who cared deeply for his children and his animals, who red-faced and cursing could muster the steepest paddock with his gum-booted family supporting his sheepdogs. Dad handed us the strength to work, to see things through, and allowed us to see the grit of life close up. He taught and trusted us to do jobs that were often above our pay grade. Ray had the warmth and the capacity to hold your heart when things got tough and gave emotional support to many through the life's weather. As a young man, Ray spent time driving bulldozers and carving roads out of the black earth of New Zealand and the red earth of Australia. And when visiting us in Sydney, he'd point out roads he'd helped make or have a story about his time working and travelling in Oz, sleeping on the beach in Cairns at night to save money whilst working during the day, exploring the country and having a yarn with the locals. One memorable story from Wellington involved a Saturday morning call from an elderly woman who woke to find a bulldozer in her back garden. Apparently, the knock-off whistle couldn't have come early enough for the team on Friday. The handbrake hadn't been engaged on one particular earth mover, and it had nudged itself out, over and down a great cliff, coming to a rolling stop in front of the surprised ladies' washing line. International travels always yielded the attention of the airport sniffer dogs, his luggage smelling like the farm long after we'd left it. The dogs knew an animal whisperer when they sniffed one. Dad's birthday always went this way: breakfast in bed, box of scorched almonds, shaving cream, hankies, and a chocolate cake. He always expressed much surprise to our delight. His deep love for Mandy and Steph, their bond, community, and days spent together was a lucky thing. I'm glad for him that he had this close family's love, companionship, and to share his working life with. Ray's enjoyment and knowledge of pipe bands continued, and I took him to the Edinburgh Tattoo in Sydney a couple of years ago. It was magnificent, and to my great surprise, I thoroughly enjoyed it too. In December, Dad joined me on Zoom to watch my daughter, Aroha, receive her school prizes. We chatted through the show together. I was in the theatre in Sydney, and he was in his home office in Tauranga. He was very proud. But back to the farm and a list. The old Bedford blue truck, the workhorse Peter, Ferguson tractor, neighbours and community, seasonal jobs, dags, silage, the home paddock, kids, cousins, aunties, uncles, grandparents, frozen dog tucker and axes, the old white BMW, kids waiting in the car while Dad had a pint at the local pub, Holly the pig, Maud the pig, bacon, chops, pet lambs, prawn cocktails and social events, evil geese, steaks for lunch, mushroom picking, daffodils, weather balloons, floods and droughts, hot summers and southern lights, halcyon days after the day's work done. Eric Raymond Alice, a big softie, deeply loved and well remembered in our thoughts and out loud for his friendship, impus humour, slightly off-coloured jokes, and capacity to embrace the totality of life. A life well lived, Ray, and a life well loved. Thank you.
Mom and I work with Dad in the export business, and I had the privilege of being able to travel to 9 different countries with him on business trips. So I'm going to share a few stories from it. But business trips, you would think it's all glamorous and everything, but it is long hours. It's early starts and late nights. And we would usually travel economy class, or as Dad would call it, the kettle class. Occasionally, we would get upgraded to the business class, but that's rare. So like one of the emails that Alex shared before from Richard Abbott, we used to ship seed potatoes to Thailand to be grown in the northern part of Thailand. So we would travel with Richard, he was our agronomist, and also we went with our Australian seed supplier, Gary. And during one of the trips, we would go through a lot of different checkpoints. The checkpoints was for them to check for drugs and guns. And in the checkpoints, there's obviously a couple men with the gate and lots of guns, and it's quite scary and daunting for my first time there, because we don't usually see guns here in New Zealand. And with Richard, he married to a Thai wife, so he is able to speak Thai. So after the first 2 checkpoints, they will explain to them what our business is in that trip. And he would say it's for Man Phalang, potato business. And he would say that we'll hear that and say, oh, these silly white people on a Man Phalang business trip. And after the first 2 checkpoints, we just go straight throughout the checkpoints. Another one is in Manila in Philippines. I remember one time I thought it was fireworks, so naturally I just thought, I'll go and check out the fireworks. He quickly dragged me back because it was actually a gunfight. And the other thing, very first I went there with a lot of the restaurants, the cash businesses, there will always be guards standing armed at the entrances because of the cash business, they don't want people to go in to rob the place. And some restaurants, they would have safe little cubicles for people to take out the handguns or whatnot from their handbags or pockets or whatever to store so they could enter the premises. So that's pretty scary. And another Manila trip that he was at, there was a hotel, there's a field, and then next to it was the mall. So he thought, okay, he can just walk straight through the field to go to the mall. But halfway through, walking through the field, the hotel guard came running out and stopped him. They said that, what are you doing? They just said, I'll just go across the field to go to the mall. I said, no, come back, take the taxi and go that way by the taxi, because him being white, he would be a target for the locals. Or at some night markets that we go to in Thailand, for example, because of my skin coloring, they just think that I'm one of them, or in Vietnam as well. I'll just obliviously walking ahead of that would be behind me, and I didn't know what's happening. They would tell me afterwards that the stallholders were really pissed off at me because they'd be talking to me in their language and I did not answer back. So they had to try to explain that, no, she doesn't understand your language, she can't speak your language, she's not one of you. So that happens quite a number of times. And of course, when we go to all these countries that I've been to, I will always try to have like half a day to a day off as a tourist. Sometimes Dad would stay behind at the hotel. Occasionally, we would go and do those little tours together, which was quite lovely. And lastly, with the export video that we saw, thank you so much, Mel, for creating that video, and also for Joe for finding it and sending it to us. We really, really appreciate it very much. Thank you so much, Dad, for bringing us here to New Zealand. It's the land of equal opportunities. I'm sure our life would be entirely different. I can't imagine really how life would be. You would be sorely missed by everyone.
I've been asked to read a poem to share with the friends today. And I've chosen one passage from the Baha'i writings and one poem by Rumi, from the writings of Abdul Baha. Why should thou be sad and heartbroken? This separation is temporal. This remoteness and sorrow is counted only by days. Thou shalt find him in the kingdom of heaven, and thou wilt attain to everlasting union. Physical companionship is ephemeral, but heavenly association is eternal. Whenever thou rememberest the eternal and never-ending union, thou wilt be comforted and blissful. And this is a poem from Rumi. You mustn't be afraid of death. You're a deathless soul. You can't be kept in a dark grave. You're filled with God's glow. Be happy with your beloved. You can't find any better. The world will shimmer because of the diamond you hold. When your heart is immersed in this blissful love, you can easily endure any bitter face around. In the absence of malice, there is nothing but happiness and good times. Don't dwell in sorrow, my friend.
Can I ask the farewell pallbearers to come up, please? The immediate family will now take Ray to his final resting place. It's not very far away, so we're hoping that we can take him there and then return to see everyone. We have lots of food and drink here for everyone, so if you are able to stay, we would appreciate it, so we can get a chance to see everyone on the way back. Yeah.